it is not crystal clear who the best team in Europe truly is.
We don't know anything yet. Anything can happen, and that's what you want from a league, right?
Fnatic are better in 2020 than they were in 2019.
Offensive flash from Larson and Vander was sent back to the fountain. Let's bounce once again. All over Rogue. 18 kills. 19 kills and one more available. The stretching strike catches on Inspired. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He gets it. Pentakill.
And the redemption isn't going to land. Selfmade comes in though and lands with a hate spike.
Alright, Alfari's flashed away from the supreme display of talent, but still got damage done. Nemesis is being eaten away by the cannon barrage. He stays alive long enough. Alfari in the 1v2 gets the kill.
I would have to say that I think OG is just draft kingdom.
Seven's gonna grab one. They want to find the follow, but he just manages to walk away. Big damage from Dan. The follow-up, the Infernum, the snares are there. Dan's looking for a victory lap as he just runs through the Excel lineup. Dan, you God, what a cleanup!
Misfits and Mad Lions, they have met a certain threshold that if you do give them an inch, they'll take the whole arm off.
Kazi, there are so many spears. The Ren needs to do a lot of damage though. Push the button. Manages to take down one of the cap. Kaiser and Kazi are doing so much work.
This is what you want from a rookie team, right? They're starting up with a bang, and I don't think they're going to slow down anytime soon.
But Finn is in the back line. Inax almost down. That's one, that's two. Larson and Finn, it's just the rogue show here in the river. Finn gets another connection onto Lorbox. Can't quite find the third, but he flashes forward. It's a double. It's Finn. He's 20 years old, Vedius.
I think Rogue are a top 4 team. You have players across the board that have the potential and the proven skill ceiling that they can punch with some of the best in the league.
If you want bad news, you know where to go. If you want good news, just follow G2.
Trying to put it down on Mad Lions. Jumping up to the back line. Carty's still alive, and now he's shut down. It's Caps to take it. He gets one, he gets two, and he's looking for more. Perks on the chase takes another, and G2 will wipe Mad Lions in the river. True shot barrage. Yanko's going to jump into the pit. He goes on double. He steals it. Yanko, so much weight on his shoulders.
Hey there, all you fine LEC fans. Playoffs is starting, and we got all the info you need right here. Now, first half Misfits, they were sort of swinging. Well, they seem a bit downtrodden, if you were to ask Midnight. But they've been building up them good habits. Kind of remind me of a cute little mongoose. See, Rogue, they can beat all the teams below them. They might even get Kiana or Larson with a bit of luck. Just don't look at their last 2 games now. Don't you do it. Or you'd be inclined to think, well, they just plain suck. Mad, oh boy, you know they get me fired up. So many young rookies, they're just trying to achieve so much. Why, just watching them brings a tear to my eye. And also the fact that I know inevitably Humanoid's gonna die. Origin are here as well, and well, quite frankly, I know what you're thinking. But in all honesty, I've had trouble sleeping. Now don't be rude now, don't you call them free. If they run it down, if they in, we'll just call it destiny. Local sheriff's Fnatic, now they're looking to get everything back in order. Them outlaws have had a run of thing for far too long. And when they play their players, ooh, they're gonna leave you breathless. Some people say it's because their play gets a little bit reckless. Now, speaking of outlaws, them G2 boys got so bored they started swapping goddamn lanes. This is where stuff gets really crazy, and I think someone might need to consider stopping them because that Yankos fella just killed 13 people last Saturday. Stop playing the goddamn music, Vedius. This is serious. They've been playing Bard top. They're out of control. What can't they do? What won't they do? They're absolute maniacs, and somebody needs to stop them. This is the LEC playoff song.
Hello everyone, the LEC Spring Playoffs Hi.
We made it.
We made it. And, well, we arrived at the playoffs. Let's take a look at the standings if you missed last week and how everything ended up. G2 Esports, not the biggest surprise there. They ended the split in first place. And with that, also got
and if anyone is going to make waves in playoffs, this is definitely one of the teams to watch.
Yeah, definitely so. Mad Lions, as we see some of their images there. And I think it is all the more impressive because they are those rookies, of course. I think also we often forget that Humanoid is touted as this experienced player on the lineup, but he hasn't been around for that long either. And I think they have evolved their playstyle throughout the spring split. A lot of praise has to go to the people behind the scenes at Mad as well as to why they have ended up in fourth place, snagging that spot away from Misfits and Rogue.
Yeah, huge credit to Mac. I know Peter Dunn came out on Twitter, because obviously this was the Splice lineup that was kind of left over, minus Duke, who went to Vitality, and was saying that he had to take a step away, so it was really Mac that kind of did the heavy lifting and putting this team together. So I just have to echo that sentiment that to take a team that no one was really having any high expectations for, the only ceiling that you had measure was a guy like Humanoid, and to bring them to fourth place is just hats off.
And another team that I really wanted to bring attention to was Misfits, because they sort of had a similar trajectory to what Mad had. Expectations at the very beginning of this split were that they were not going to make playoffs at all. They were going to be one of the worst teams in the LEC. There was so much criticism from the fans that this team just, what were they thinking? How are they going to build this roster? And like, what were they thinking when it came to putting this thing together? That here they are, fighting right now in that 5th place position. And while they did seem to fall off towards the second half of the split, I think the fact that they did make it into playoffs, the amount of growth that they were able to make off the back of the influence that we saw from their coaching staff as well, I think is commendable and worthwhile taking note of how much of a threat they can be in this playoffs.
Absolutely, and maybe because of the fact that they went on that big winning streak and then dipped and didn't seem so hot, we got off that Misfits hype train. But as you say correctly, when you look at their entire spring split and kind of their previous year as well, right, and the fact that they had to rebuild, I think that's great. And I'm definitely a bit more positive about Misfits than about Rogue, because they already got to playoffs. They already got past round 1 of playoffs last year, and I'm a bit hot and cold about them this year, I have to say.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of question marks, especially in kind of the last few looks that we got at the team. That said, Rogue were the team that a lot of analysts, the broadcast staff, were really hyping up. We said that this is going to be the team in top 4. We had heard in the offseason that they were just flying through scrims comparatively to Misfits, where I think I kept hearing the line over and over, like, Misfits are way better than they have any right to be. And so it was like, okay, Misfits will probably have kind of this hot streak, and then we expect them to cool off. But they just kept getting hotter and hotter, and I think a lot of that has to do with a guy like Febevin and his individual performance versus kind of the collective team strength that we've seen from Rogue and their development over the course of the split.
That's a good point. And as always, the playoffs can reset everything, because more often than not, crazy things happen when we get into those best of 5s. Now, some important things that we have to touch on. First up is championship points. If you haven't heard that the system about awarding championship points has been revamped. You now get awarded points for your placements at the end of the spring playoffs and at the end of the summer regular season. And then your points will decide your seeding going into the summer playoffs. But on top of that, spring split is even more important. I think you may be muted, Indiana, so I don't know if we're going to solve that, but I'm going to take off your point from there. If you were not, for the people at home, then we have the information twice, but that never hurts. Basically, the top 3 teams from summer represent the LEC at Worlds 2020, so there's no longer a regional qualifier, which means that if you don't get any points now in spring, as Excel didn't because they didn't get into those playoffs, it will be harder for them to get those points and get a better seeding going into those summer playoffs, and thus Worlds qualification. That is down the line. There is a lot of new information, and you can read more about the format at lec.gg/format. However, this increases the stakes for the spring split, as we have said, and as we embark upon the spring playoffs, we asked you all at home to vote on Twitter and tell us how you thought this first week of matches would play out. I'm not surprised that G2 and Fnatic were picked as winners by the people on Twitter, maybe a bit more by Misfits.
Yeah, I think that I will say that I think G2 are obviously heavy favorites for the first half of, or our first day rather, of playoffs, but I think that many fans just immediately put Fnatic as the clear favorites against Origin just because of how they have looked in recent weeks. But I want to remind people of spring of last year when Fnatic and Origin went up against each other in that best of 5. Origin is a very good team at planning and prepping, especially in these very long series. So I think it's going to be much closer than fans anticipate. While I do still think Fnatic are the favorites, I think that it's a little bit closer than I think what the fans are currently expecting it to be.
Yeah, I was on the fan hype train, I gotta say, but yeah.
Fnatic and Origin will be close? Thaddeus! We're gonna have to have words.
I have to follow Indiana a bit there. I mean, I thought Fnatic was going to just blow out OG, but Vedius reminded me in rehearsal of the fact that we also thought that last year, and it didn't always happen. As said, the playoffs are crazy.
I think that something we have to factor in whenever it comes into best of 5 is that they're a completely different ball game. And when it comes to evolving in a series, making sure that you understand how to go from next game to next game, like while there are a lot of experienced players on both sides. I just have a lot of confidence in Origin's ability to read the draft and read the current meta and figuring out the best picks that not only work for them, but can also try and shut down their opponents. So again, I agree with you both. I think the Fnatic are the favorites. I think that it's going to be Fnatic favored, and I would predict a 3-1 or 3... I wouldn't say 3-0 Fnatic, but 3-1, 3-2 Fnatic. But that's not to say that Origin are completely down and out, and I think it's going to be our closest series of the weekend.
Yeah, 3-1, the classic cop-out prediction. We know that. But that's tomorrow, though. The action will start tonight with a true David versus Goliath matchup. I think it fits really well here for the new teams, as the newest team in the LEC take on our reigning champions.
Every team can lose to every team, but I do think we will win our series against them. Just like I think we'll win the rest of the playoffs. You know, we've done it before. We will do it again this split.
Oh, they find it. Wow. Carzzy now on a rampage. Beautiful cast.
I'm definitely looking forward to playing them in the best of 5. I think they will have a lot of cheat picks prepared. Testing these matchups against our standard AD carry is going to be really fun.
There we go then, Mad versus G2 Esports. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the matchup, I think it's just important to look at the pedigree of both these organizations, and then especially G2, who has been so successful for so long here in Europe.
Again, it's kind of like everyone's heard us say G2 multiple times, but to kind of take a step back, because I feel like we kind of gloss over it. We don't really give them their due diligence because we're so used to them winning now. G2 have 10 times as many games played as Mad. They haven't lost a single best of 5 in 2.5 years, and the only best of 5 that they lost were against the world champions. They held the consecutive number for titles back to back to back to back, and if they win this 2020 spring split, they will have tied Fnatic on the total number of LEC titles held. And so that's the empire that G2 have built around them versus little baby Mad Lions, who are on their very first split, who are just like first day to school, like rocking up and getting a shot at just these god tier champions before them.
And I think what's really interesting about how Mad now go up against G2 is that it's obviously going to be a one-sided battle. It's obviously going to be Mad showcasing what they're even capable of against G2, but how many teams get that opportunity to have a best of 5 against not only one of the best teams in their league, but also one of the best teams in the world? Because of the changes to our playoffs and because of the changes to the format, we get a great opportunity where Mad, even if they lose today, it doesn't mean that their playoff run is over. So this is a great learning opportunity under the assumption that they lose. But the thing about Mad is that they have been causing surprises throughout the split. And while G2 are gods when it comes to their record in the best of 5, very rarely do they consistently look clean. They were pushed to the limit against Fnatic last year. They have been pushed to the limit multiple times before, and Mad has showcased consistently throughout this split, given the fact that they have been able to successfully take down the top 3 teams, that they can compete and may be looking to surprise today.
That is a good point, and I know we're wary of saying, well, they don't have the biggest chance in this one, and it's just hard to say that because G2 is so powerful, but I think you summarized it correctly there. They're already the biggest surprise of the spring split, that absolute dark horse, and there's no reason to think that they couldn't continue some of those elements into the playoffs. I think notably the way they approach those important games, as they have beaten the top 3 in our playoffs already.
It's about having that confidence, and it's almost like Mad are so young and they're so fresh and new to this situation that they almost don't know that they should be afraid. You know, they haven't been beaten down by the G2s and the Fnatics and kind of like lost all the hope, like, here I go into another best of 5 against the dynasty of the LEC, the legacy of the LEC, the kings of the LEC. Like, they believe that they can win, and then they have the footage and the tape to prove that they can already take those teams down. So it's this new spirit of a team that you probably don't usually see.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they prep today, because we've seen their prep be very strong in the past. We see some really interesting things from them in terms of things like the Kalista attack. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later today. But I think what's really interesting is the fact that we haven't gotten to see this iteration of this roster in best of 5, right? What will they do? How will they adapt? How will they deal with the pressure? Because when we see G2 in best of 5s, they progressively get faster and more aggressive as the series goes on. So that first game, I think, is going to be really important and set up a good baseline to see how Mad can stack up against G2.
That is true. And what is interesting also is that they, even if they don't manage to make it versus G2 Esports, they will end up in the lower bracket. So it is important for them to take this as a big opportunity to learn. And if it happens, it would be absolutely fantastic. And I think rightfully so, if they have their first game and they're able to put on a good showing, which we know they can, because a lot of the pillars of why they have done so well this spring split so far is because of their smart drafting, their good preparation, and their people behind the scenes. So at the helm of this, and who is actually part of a lot of that success, is their coach Mac, and he joined Laura for a pre-game interview.
I am joined with Mac today from Mad Lions to talk about the playoff game. Thank you very much for joining me.
All good, all good.
I mean, you came into the split with this rookie lineup as a head coach. Now looking forward to playoffs. What can we expect from Mad Lions that we didn't see yet?
Expect that we didn't see yet? Hopefully we will see more of what we saw in the game against Origin, where we were really proactive and really aggressive and really decisive. It's something we've been working on a lot in the past 2 or 3 weeks. Like, we've done a lot of studying other teams and the way they do things in the early game, and a lot of focusing on that and trying to bring out the kind of decisiveness and the aggressiveness in our players, which I think they all naturally have. But I think they needed to be taught how to channel it a bit more, make it a bit more precise or accurate, shall we say, or coordinated, however you want to phrase that. So yeah, hopefully that's something that we can show on stage again.
This would come in handy as you will be facing G2. And we often say that coming against G2, if you come in scared, you already lost. I think that's something you would agree with here. So how do you put your players in combat mode mindset against G2?
I don't think it's necessarily anything special going up against G2. I mean, we already went through that. Like, we played them first game of the season. It's 4 of our players' first game in the LEC, and we played G2. And actually, we had a pretty good early game that game. That was one of our best early games, I think. I don't think it's too different from going up against any other team, aside from the fact that obviously G2 has like a lot of unique picks, but they're not without their weaknesses either. Honestly, I think when you play against a team that has uniqueness in terms of their champion pool, obviously you have Caps, who like doesn't play some of the meta champions and also plays a lot of off meta champions, a lot of mages and weird stuff like that. And even Nikki has been pulling out a lot of like off meta stuff like the Bard, and yeah, they have a like distinct champion pool to other teams. I mean, I think you just focus on yourself and what you know that you're good at. So that's what we'll be doing for the most part.
How would you define G2's weaknesses, knowing all that? You mentioned the fact that the early game may have been one of your weaknesses here. And you told me that you've been working on this maybe by syncing up the players a bit more. So how do you strike to take down G2 here?
I don't think it's one thing in specific. Like, obviously you want to understand the way that they operate as a team, but really it's more about emphasizing the strengths that we have a team rather than necessarily attacking G2. Although I do think that like their bot lane hasn't had the best time this year. We'll see if that changes in playoffs, because, you know, maybe Caps is bored of playing too many ADCs now and wants to switch up and play lots of mages. So maybe there'll be a lot of spicy picks in this series. Who knows? But yeah, I don't think there's anything like hugely specific that you need to attack against G2. I think we can just go and play our game, and then as long as we get through early, we're more than happy to fight them in the mid game.
All right, well then, outside of the game, you came in this year as a new head coach with this new lineup. Are you proud about the success of Mad Lions so far?
Yeah, I'm really proud of the way all of our players have grown. I think all of them have overcome a lot of like unique and different challenges, you know, inside of the game, outside of the game, like all kinds of things. You know, we do a lot of extra stuff at Mad Lions. Like, we do loads of extra gym and nutrition and health stuff. We make them do all kinds of extra things outside of the game, team building and meditation. And a lot of those have been like big challenges and put the players outside of their comfort zone. I think they've dealt with them super, super well. Honestly, I think compared to other teams I've been on in the past, I feel a lot less stressed and the atmosphere feels a lot more positive than it has in the past. So I'm really happy with the way things are going so far.
And I really hope we can see that transforms during the game later today. Thank you very much, Mac, for your insights, and good luck about the game versus G2.
Thanks very much.
And back to you guys.
Much.
And back to you guys.
Thank you very much indeed. A tall order for Coach Mac, but I think the proof is in the pudding as to what they've already shown this spring split, and he summarizes it perfectly. Don't go in scared, because then you've already lost.
I really liked hearing from him say that he was just going to play to his own team's strength. It's not about trying to pick apart the holes in G2 while he does think their bot lane has had a bit of a shaky split. I think the approach is strong, and I think it ties in a lot with what Frost has been saying, which is that these guys don't know the fear. They don't know what it's like to play against this G2 team in a best of 5, so they can just give it their all and do everything they've been doing for the rest of this split.
It's really your only option, too, as well, when you go against G2. I think so many teams take the wrong approach into it, where they, try to find a very specific strategy against the team that they're facing, like around a pick or around a side of the map. And if you are going to pick a side of the map, Mac already said bot side, which I do agree with him there, but it's like, just prioritize what you're good at. Like, G2 are going to get whatever they want, no matter what, and they're probably going to be good at it, so just make sure that you show up and play your game on the day.
That's a good point, and that's a good focus. I think we do need to touch on kind of for people who maybe have not been spending or have been paying that much attention to intrinsically how G2 has evolved. They are different this year. They seem incredibly strong, and Caps is in the bot lane and Perks is in the mid lane, but it doesn't seem to hamper them until now.
I think what's really impressive about G2 is how they've actually gotten better this split. At the beginning of the split, it was rough. It was shaky. Everyone was trying to figure out their new roles. Everyone was still trying to figure out their synergy together. But now they are early game monsters. Caps is not dying as much. Jankos and Perks are working fluidly. And Wonder, he stopped playing support's top lane. He has gone back to his old carry dominant top lane ways, while Mickey is helping roam around the map and work with Jankos to help dominate this early game. And just look at some of these stats. They are first across the board. They spend the vast majority of their games sitting with the lead. They average a 2.2k gold lead at 15 minutes. This team is monstrous right now, and you have to be afraid when playing against this team in a best of 5.
They're playing so well that they're actually ruining some of our stats categories because they're just so far off the charts, especially in damage and how they win their games, and that's absolutely crazy. They are favorites. I think we don't have to say that again, but in the end, I heard you mention the bot lane. For instance, Mickey did say in PGL last week that he thought that they would have quite some trouble with the Mad Lions bot lane. How important is that bottom lane going to be in this best of 5?
I don't think it's just trouble with the Mad Lions bot lane, but it's just kind of bot lane in general. If you're going to pick a point of attack for G2, it has been the bot lane. It was that way when it was Perks and Mickey. It is also that way when it's Caps and Mickey, because they like to play to win the lane, to kill their opponent, and that does leave them exposed. And when you have someone like Carzzy and Kaiser, they will step to and they will play kill-oriented bot lanes, like the Taric and the Kalista that they can pull out. So if anyone can step to and really try to punish G2 when they get over-aggressive in the bot lane, when they try to style on their opponents, Mad Lions certainly have the tools.
And I think that the Mad Lions bot lane have also showcased they're willing to bring out new stuff. We mentioned it earlier, but they were the bot lane that played the Kalista Taric, a bot lane that was new to the European ecosystem, or meta system rather, and it really shaked heads, and it also got a huge upset win against G2. So they also played the Set and Syndra last week, so I'm excited to see what this duo is ready to bring out. These two rookies have been making waves in the bot lane, and I think that they can pose a pretty strong challenge to G2's duo.
A definite possible X factor in this best of 5. As we get closer to the draft, we're just a couple of minutes away. I want to touch on that bottom lane of that Kalista Taric. We of course saw it in week 5 when Mad Lions were able to beat G2 Esports. And as we take a look at this draft, I want to hear from you why this worked so well, why they were able to win that game, and what they have to replicate to win 3 games today.
I mean, if you go back and watch the tape, that early game was horrific for the Mad Lions. It was really bad. It was like repeated dives. Jankos made early ganks on bot lane, then Wonder outplayed the top lane dive, and it was really just a single team fight that G2 flipped and then ate the wrong end of a Taric ultimate, and then it rotated into a Baron. Like, obviously, Humanoid getting really fed on LeBlanc helps, which is really what I want to put a magnifying glass on. Humanoid on LeBlanc and Shadow on Lee Sin. These are by far their 2 biggest comfort champions, and I think they're going to have massive targets on them coming into this ban phase. Do G2 roll the dice, give Humanoid and Shadow kind of their big comfort champions, or will they repeatedly deny, especially Shadow, his Lee Sin, which is above and beyond just his most proficient champion, and see what else they can kind of dig into to try to stay on even footing with our best players in the league, pound for pound across the board?
That's a great observation, the fact that they're going to have good plans, but they have a certain amount of champions that G2 can easily ban out, whilst when the shoe is on the other foot for Mad Lions, what are they going to do against the flexibility of G2 Esports, which seemingly has taken on even more extreme forms and more flexibility compared to last year?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, Ifya, because when we look back at last week and they were playing things like Bard top, Shyvana jungle, like, yes, they are troll picks in one sense, but at the same time, Aatrox Swain bot lane, would we really be surprised if Caps and Mickey played that bot lane? I feel like that this team is always experimenting, and you know they're going to have something in their back pocket ready. The ultimate question is, can Mad push them enough to force them to bring their pocket picks out, or are they going to hold them for later in the tournament? I'm excited to see.
Fantastic. There are so many questions that are going to get answered. How strong is G2 really? How are they going to start at defending their title these playoffs? And does Mad have enough of an X factor and a dark horse factor to make it through this gruesome best of 5? What a start to the playoffs. This is the moment we have all been waiting for as the reigning champions kick the playoffs off against the new superstars of the LEC.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else. My name is Trevor Quickshot Henry, and I'm joined by Jacob Yamato Cannon Mebdi. It's LEC playoffs, and it is the defending champions going up against one of the more exciting rookie teams. Yamato, this should be a lot of fun. They absolutely will, Yamato. Sorry to cut you off. I believe we're just getting your audio connected to the stream. There's a chance that beautiful monologue may need to be repeated, my friend. Apologies about the technical challenges, everybody at home. As you've noticed, we have moved a few of the casters around and we've added webcams to the stream. And obviously we are continuing to iterate on our setup. We will be jumping into draft in just a moment or two. It is G2 Esports on the blue side with Mad Lions on the